Testing 1, 2, 3, testing.
Testing 1, 2, 3, testing.
Yeah, it looks pretty good.
That looks pretty good.
Yeah, so I'm
Yeah, so
learning the ins and outs of doing live stream on YouTube. Besides the music stuff, I have other channels for my jewelry work and other things. Um, Basically, doing this just to have archives of different things and as related to the arts that I do, whether it's music or jewelry or anything else. In this particular case, this is for Son of Welty, and I'm excited to, about this year in particular. So just to give a little background on my music world, I've been doing music for ages. Well, since I was 17. I'm 55 now, and I've always had ambitions to have my own band, and was able to accomplish that in 2007 with when I lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I live on a Navajo reservation now, but back then, it really was just me playing music, writing songs, acoustics on acoustic. And one day, a buddy of mine, he plays guitar in a really well known native rock band from that time. He just said to me, "Hey, JJ, let's check out let's let's see what you have as far as your music and writing." And I said, "Okay." So I invited him over to my place in Albuquerque, and that was kind of the beginning. So it was just him and I on acoustics and just jamming out, and then we just kind of decided, well, we needed a bass and drum players, and so he knew of a bass player, and so we called him, and that was Joe Pacheco, and he's been with the band ever since the very beginning. He's bandmate number two, I guess, and so he's been with the band up until present day, and so we brought him on, and then we started searching for a drummer. We went through a variety of different auditions with different drummers, and finally landed on Pax Garcia, who's with the band still currently. So I'm lucky to have both of them continuing on with us. Um, there's a point where there was a break with Pax for a few years, but eventually we landed back on understanding that he was an important and reliable part of what we were doing musically, and so we got back together with Pax, and so he's been with band ever since. So originally the band was called Saving Damsels, and the name was actually born out of some counseling therapy that I was going through. I had gotten a lot of trouble with my drinking, DWIs, and and aggravated DWIs were had piled up to where I had a third aggravated DWI. So that was a tough time in my life, and I needed to really change something. And in in high school, I'd always played guitar and wrote these little funny little songs and about res life, and eventually, life took over school, college, all that stuff, and I never really messed with music much anymore at that time. So then, fast forward to standing before the judge yeah, I really realized that I needed to change things in my life. That I've never really known myself to be a an artist or a creator, creative, and and during that sobering up time, I was journaling, and so part of the journaling led me to start to write and think about the lyrics I used to write for those funny little songs. So in any case, I ended up um, starting to write, compose songs. And so after going through drug court, which is kind of a program that allowed me to seek counseling and different ways to deal with my addiction to alcohol. In there, I started really start to dig deep into my own personal life and did lots of writings, both for the inward sides, the going inward into my psyche, life, and thinking, and at the same time, that was one outlet. But I found that I was really thinking back on the ability to write songs. And I love to sing, so um, I started to set about paying for an acoustic guitar there in Albuquerque. You know, $50 there, $100 there. I brought a brand new acoustic guitar, and so that kind of was the beginning of second. Oh, okay. Yeah, that was my mom. I live with my parents and kind of take care of each other out here. But anyway, where was I at? Yeah, so started writing songs and they're really helpful in terms of getting stuff out from the inside of my my brain and all that. A lot of them were very patriarchal in terms of my attitudes towards women. So I recognize that to this day. So again, going back to the name, Saving Damsels was born out of that therapy. One of the things that you, when you're in this therapy session, you talk about the ways that you cope, and and one of the coping mechanisms is a people pleaser, and so, but the people pleasing comes at the expense of not being altruistic, not being that's all you're doing it for. You're helping somebody for the sake of helping somebody, without any expectation, nothing in return for your help. And so that's what I was tending to do, especially with women. Um, I was again saving damsels. So started to wake up from that nonsense in my head of that patriarchal thinking, those attitudes towards women, and so luckily I've uh, I've progressed in that and quite a bit and continued to grow in that area. So anyway, that's the therapy, counseling, alcohol addiction period of music. And through the entire time, there's always this underpinning or occasional thoughts about, uh, the things that are happening to indigenous peoples, and specifically in my case, towards Navajo people and Hopi people. Those are my two tribes or two nations that I claim, and I have family that claim me in those two tribes. So I would write even the first album. There's a couple songs related to how like border towns and how we're treated as people in border towns. You know, places like Gallup, New Mexico, and Farmington, New Mexico. Just how Navajo people and other tribes from the area are treated. So there's a very political resentment or like political perspective that I tried to draw, that I tried to write songs about. So anyway, fast forward, great 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 success as a band and lots of touring in the sense of we did, you know, hundreds of gigs a year and some locally, some other places, and so yeah, it was a lot of fun, a lot of good times, and it kept me busy. It kept me from you know falling back into my old coping mechanism. Yeah, coping mechanism, and that's to drink when dealing with any kind of hardship or obstacle or challenge. So now, back in 2016, there's somewhat of a shift in in my life. It's all related to work, and during this whole time, music was kind of my side gig, and I was working in the healthcare IT industry. Good job and good pay, and all of that kind of dissolved over a period of maybe about a year to 2 years. And during that time, I unplugged from the city, unplugged from living in town or in Albuquerque, and moved back home to the Navajo reservation. During that time, I was kind of searching for what the next thing was going to be. You know, after initially maybe about a year, 2 years, trying to figure out if I can get an IT job out in this area on the reservation and see if I could make it work. All that kind of fell through, and so I eventually started in on making jewelry and well woodworking at first, cradle boards. That's what I became known for at the beginning, and while that was cool, it still wasn't paying the bills. The woodworking, cradle boards, cedar boxes, etc. So I landed on jewelry and making jewelry, and that just took off, and so I've been um, for 7 years, 7 plus years, I've been nurturing that side of my life, the creative of being a jewelry maker out on the reservation, and also just kind of participating in my parents' life and recognizing that when I came home, that the quality of life needed some help, and I had to figure out a way to make a living. And so jewelry is what I landed on at all those years later after IT was done, and it paused everything else that I was doing, which included the music. I was still writing occasionally, and occasionally I do solo gigs here and there, but and occasionally get together with a band when somebody asked specifically for us to play. But for the most part, it was a kind of a drought of band performance. But it's interesting that right before all this happened in 2016 is when we last recorded our an album, and all those songs are very political. Majority of those songs were political in nature, and so that led me to think about the name of the band, and I I kind of I probed the band members to see what they thought, and with kind of their understanding of where I was coming from, I decided to change the name of the band to Son of Welty, Weldy refers to the time when the U.S. government, U.S. Army, force marched Navajo and Apache people from their homelands, the original places that they lived, and force marched them out to um, Fort Sumner, New Mexico. Uh, a bunch of a bunch of relatives, Navajo people, and Apache died during that time. It's basically an open air concentration camp. Can't go anywhere. Can't do anything. So understanding that history, and then lots of influences from current politically left indigenous folks, understanding their perspectives on imperialism, on colonialism, etc., and then also on radical indigenous feminism. Those things really were helping me to reform my entire approach to life. So the band changed its name, or I changed the band's name from Saving Damsels to Son of Huerti, and that was we released that first album, and on releasing um, people, this is how I perceived it, that maybe people weren't ready for that kind of political messaging, and even among indigenous folks, that they weren't ready for that kind of messaging in songs. And so I never really fully released it. I'd have one site that had all the tracks in that album, and but it wasn't available for sale. Well, maybe it was. I don't remember, but yeah, it was available for sale, but not a lot of traction. Not that we were expecting traction. It's just a way for me to put on record. That's why it's called a record. Put on record a those feelings in song at the time, and we were the album actually won a New Mexico Music Award for best rock album for all the entries for that year in New Mexico. Now, competition is one thing that's I'm still not sure about, but at the same time, we submitted it because it wasn't just me working on the album; it was me and my bandmates and the engineers and etc. So it's a whole group of creatives that are collectively working towards and in which is the record. And so I submitted it to different award shows, and so we got that the best rock album CD or best rock album for New Mexico Music Awards, and that was the last of it. And the transition happened where I work work stuff just wasn't panning out. IT world was coming to a close, and so I ended up back home on the res, and again focused on jewelry making, trying to make a living, and uh, and it just so happened at the beginning of the year, January 2025. Some friends, French filmmakers, came or messaged me, and they said, "JJ, we would love to do a documentary about your life and your parents' life and my daughter's life, kind of a generation thing." Um, Years earlier in 2013 or 14, they had come and did a little video, mini documentary about my band and the music and what where it came from, and uh, so where it came from, what they were meaning there was you know place, and so we brought it back to the Navajo reservation and filmed with my parents and one of my sisters who's passed, Winona Otero. Um, so that's they had done that way back when in 2013, I think. And so fast forward to January 2025, they called again or messaged again saying we'd like to do this larger film about you, your parents, and your daughter. So I agreed, and they came. It was actually a couple months prior to that they emailed, but this January was when they were scheduled to come. So one of the things they talked about was we'd love to see you in the process of writing a new song. I thought really hard about that, and the process of writing a new song is a hard one for me now. Um, Mostly, I believe, because I put so much energy into my jewelry work, both in creative and then also on the business side. I'm really busy constantly. It seems like. So I told him, well, I actually have some songs that haven't been recorded yet, and they need to be recorded. Said and I said maybe I can get together with my band at a rehearsal space, and you can hear those songs and us playing them, kind of working through it. And they agreed that would be cool. And so it's all right. Not knowing that while we were in Albuquerque for, I was kind of helping with the location stuff with the film too, because there are many things and many parts to this little documentary. And I was helping because I know the area and I know people that they could potentially connect with. So we were in a meeting in Albuquerque at Duran's Pharmacy for breakfast, of all places. And right at that time, I get a text message from Roman Garcia, good friend of the band, good friend of mine, and he's actually the very first recording engineer. He recorded our very first Saving Damsels album in 2007 or 8, probably 8. And he messages me, he says, hey, JJ, I'm going to be taking over the studio space and I'd love for you to come check it out. And not knowing that all this other stuff was going on with the filming. And I was just like, wow, this is too weird. This is, I don't know, too coincidental for it to be an accident. And so I said, yeah. I mean, and I'm not of the mindset to dig into recording a new album. I talked about it with the band and internally to myself, and it's like that's a lot of work. It's a lot of managing a bunch of people's schedules, a lot of timing, and it's a lot of money to record. And so, long story short, the band was it was a they're good to go to record for that one song. And so we went in and we were filmed at the same time. And after I had forgotten how good it feels to put on record a a song that's been written years ago on just me and an acoustic guitar, and then all these my musician friends, my bandmates coming in and putting a body to it, you know, putting some mass to it, and it's one of the best feelings in the world to create something like that. I get some of that on a daily basis when I finish a piece of jewelry, but this is wholly something different. My my jewelry is a solo endeavor, whereas this is a collaborative effort. And in any case, it was so cool to hear the playback of even just the rough the rough recording. And yeah, so anyway, that's how that all began. 10 years later, um, almost 10 years. Well, maybe like 8 or 9 hiatus from recording and getting back in the studio with an old buddy, old recording engineer friend Ramon, and calling in bass player Joe Pacheco, um, keyboard player Douglas Belling, drummer Pax Garcia, and then saxophonist Carly Marshall. That's the current makeup of the 5 piece band, and we've had several guest musicians that have come on to the album recording, and it's been good. It's been a good feeling to restring my guitars that have sat for years. It feels good to push my vocals again. Um, I've struggled trying to sing, but when you hear the playback, you can hear the struggle in my voice, and again, we call it a record for a reason. It's a recording in time of what's going on, and we are in uh, politically crazy times from an indigenous perspective, from a Navajo perspective. We've had to deal with this from the very beginning, post contact, and it's where we're at currently. And while I'm not a frontlines person, I'm not a revolutionary. I heard a quote recently. I think it was Tom Morello quoting somebody else. He said something along the lines of, "You can't have a revolution without song." And while I feel my music isn't for the larger audience, for the music for the everyday music consumer, I've shared with the folks that are on the front lines, and some of them have responded back and just like they really appreciate the songs. So, with that said, we have 3 songs currently on all the streaming platforms. If you stream or if you want to buy, they're all actually on, I think, Amazon, Apple, and YouTube. It's such a crazy mess out there in terms of distribution. It's crazy. I don't understand any of it. But in any case, it's all out there, and you can also reach out to the band directly to myself here on YouTube if you want. And yeah, it's a good day to be able to wake up and do something creative. In my case, some of that time has been sliced off for writing or for recording music. It might be old songs, but still they haven't been recorded for the public, and so that feels good. And it feels good to get together with the bandmates, with the musicians, guest musicians, and then with our engineers. So in any case, I was just really testing this the live stream aspect of this YouTube channel, and looks like I've been on 30 minutes. So if you made it this far, I appreciate you and thank you. And we'll continue to with the studio recording and see how many songs we can um, put out this year. All right, you guys have a good one, and solidarity with all oppressed peoples everywhere in the world.